It has only been 44 days, but the president will have a lot to talk about tonight when he heads up to Capitol Hill to address a joint...
6 weeks ago, I stood beneath the dome of this Capitol and proclaimed the dawn of the golden age of America. As we
inaugurate a new president and vice president.
From that moment on, it has been nothing but swift and unrelenting action to usher in the greatest and most successful era in the history of our country. I return to this chamber tonight to report that America's momentum is back. Our spirit is back. Our pride is back. Members of Congress, and to my fellow citizens, America is back. Americans have given us a mandate for bold and profound change. Every day my administration is fighting to bring a future that America deserves. We are draining the swamp, and the days of rule by unelected bureaucrats are over. Over the past 6 weeks, I have signed nearly 100 executive orders and taken more than 400 executive actions to restore common sense, safety, optimism, and wealth all across our wonderful land. Despite the best efforts of those who will try to censor us, silence us, break us, destroy us, Americans are today a proud, free, sovereign, and independent nation that will always be free. My fellow Americans, get ready for an incredible future because the golden age of America has only just begun. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
I'm back. I guess you guys, can you guys see me? Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Glesna. I probably better not on camera. I lost my lipstick, so I don't really have any makeup on. Just some lip gloss. I don't know what I did with it. Anyway, what a morning I'm having. Everything was going so good. I played my little Trump video and everything looked great, and then all of a sudden, technical issues. Well, I do hope you guys are having a good morning either way. Mr. Pardo, so much to talk about today. You know, things continue to change every single day. Something new popping up. You know, some of the things I want to talk about today, of course, Elon Musk, Donald Trump talking about ending daylight savings time. I think, expected that to happen at some point. And then we have French President Macron talking about war, you know, Germany talking about war. You know, I think we've seen this coming for what, a couple of years now. So we'll get into that, of course. There's so much going on. You know, Donald Trump wants to end the Federal Reserve. Some people are saying that LGBTQ should be considered a terror organization. So curious what you guys think about that. But, you know, Karen, you can see, yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. You know, it's like sometimes when I come in the morning, everything's perfectly normal. I can see myself I'm always rushing around. I have so much to do in the morning, that to get the show put together, and you can't really do it the night before. I look up news stories the night before, the day before, and the days before, but everything changes overnight. There's always new news. So I have to get up, scan the different groups that I belong to, different folks that I talk to, find out what the newest of the news is, and of course have to put that in, insert that in, and get my videos together and all that good stuff. And then everything looks really good until you hit the button. Then it's like everything can go haywire some mornings. But you know what? That's what podcasting is. So it's okay. I always think, this is a very relaxed show. It doesn't, I'm not trying to win any awards. I don't have any sponsors. It's just for us, for me and you guys. So it's really all that matters, isn't it? Nothing formal going on here. So again, lots to talk about today. Kevin, when will Trump sign the law regarding burning the American flag? That's a good question, Kevin. I was thinking about some things like that this morning, that there's still some things that I haven't heard tackled yet. We need to absolutely create a law in which it is some type of very severe punishment for anyone that burns a flag. Now, kind of part of that, Kevin, is that Donald Trump, and we haven't really talked about this yet, he did mandate a lot of these colleges and universities where if they have students who do burn flags, who protest violently, that they will have to be, oh, what is the right word for it? Not suspended, but terminated, expelled. That's the word. So he's trying to get these colleges and universities to create a reform to where when these students come out and protest, and a lot of them are not Americans, they're here from other countries living in America while they go to school, and they come out and they burn American flags. And of course, we have a lot of Americans burning flags too. And so he's trying to work out a deal to where these students, when they have these protests and burn flags, that they are not only expelled from the school, but they're deported from our country. But when are we going to come up with laws about Americans, people who, live here? We can't just deport them burning the flag. That's certainly one of the things we need to tackle. Something else I was thinking about this morning, I know that they're trying to end gain of function research. Our very own Josh Hawley of Missouri, who I can't stand, by the way, was talking in an open session the other day about ending gain of function research. Our new appointee to the NIH agreeing that they will end gain of function research. But just think about it. I'm sure you guys have some just suggestions. There are so many things we need to do that we haven't heard. I mean, Donald Trump, of course, only been in office for a short time. What is today? March the 6th, I believe. And he came in on January 20th. There's a whole list of things that I think we need to tackle. BlackRock being one of them. When are we going to stop companies like BlackRock purchasing entire subdivisions in the United States? When are we going to stop these predatory, companies like BlackRock, who what they do is they buy these homes, they pay homeowners 20% more than what the home's value is, or more than what they're asking. They obtain these homes, they put them out there on the rental market, and they put a big for lease sign up, and then they take in your applications, which you have to pay $100 per family member for, anyone over 18, $100 application fee, and then they just deny everyone and they just sit on the house for months. Because you know why? Because they're bringing in more money in application fees than they're bringing in monthly rent. So of course they're going to do that. BlackRock is notorious for it. There's a lot of groups that do the same thing. And Kevin, yes, if they allow the protest, they will lose federal funding. Thank you for adding that. I forgot about that part. And that's so important. We know that these colleges and universities, they're just breeding grounds for crazy extreme liberalism. And we have to stop. I was just reading an article the other day about talking about colleges and universities that are, liberal, just churning out liberalism left and right. And one of the things that was discussed is that the majority of the parents who send their kids to these schools, they don't want their children to be influenced, by this woke mind virus. But that's exactly what happened. You've seen countless photos of this is what my child looked like before, they went to this college or university. This is what they look like after. I mean, don't you consider that to some degree to be like a terror organization? Which is, a lot of really that goes back to the argument where some people are saying that LGBTQ should be considered a terrorist organization, that Black Lives Matter should be considered a terrorist organization. And I really gave this a lot of thought. Russia, which I know we talk a lot about Russia on the show, we're going to talk about it a little bit more later in the show. Russia has deemed LGBTQ organizations as terror organizations. And, a lot of people think that's because Russia doesn't support gay rights or they don't allow people the freedom to choose their sexuality. But that's not the case. In Russia, they have a rule that is you can do whatever you want to do, be whoever you want to be. However, do not use your influence over others in the community, which is exactly what LGBTQ does. And normally I would have never thought of it as being, terror related. It didn't make sense to me. And then you start seeing the USAID funding. And then you start seeing how we, the United States in particular, Europe in particular, has used LGBTQ funding of these different organizations to cause instability and chaos. And that's exactly what's happening. Donald Trump has been getting blasted over this African country called, I think you pronounce it Lesotho. Does that sound right? Lesotho? I think that's right. And in this country, it's the country that he said no one's ever heard of in South Africa. And we were funding them. What was it? Was it $8 million for LGBTQ to fund an LGBTQ group in this little country? And when you think about it, now, why would our government fund LGBTQ promotion in South Africa? It's because that causes chaos and instability. And so it makes sense to me that Russia feels the way that they do. Allison replying to Patty, after the four mayors from sanctuary cities testified yesterday, Laura Loomer said she was referring to the DOJ for criminal investigation for violating U.S. code and subsection 1324, which is a federal offense. Yeah, those mayors need to go to jail from if they're protecting sanctuary cities. Yes. Lori says, it happened to me. Came from a very conservative household, went to college, voted for Clinton. My dad was so disappointed. I obviously saw the error of my ways pretty quickly. It can happen to anyone, Lori, but as long as you found your way back, that's all that matters. And I think a lot of people didn't see Bill Clinton for who he was back then. Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Robert. And so I don't know. I don't think we here in the United States would ever or should ever consider LGBTQ as a terror organization, but I can definitely understand how someone could come to the conclusion that it does cause it completely disrupts a country. Your sexuality belongs at home behind closed doors, not out in public. Nobody cares if you're gay or straight or one of the other 20 different terms that you can be these days. Nobody really cares, do they? They don't care. And so when these organizations are funded, they primarily target children. And if you think about it, what is their ultimate goal? Really, what is their goal? It is to promote the end, of the family unit. It is, whether you think it is or isn't. And it causes chaos and instability in all of these different countries, particularly countries who are not as liberally, socially liberal as we here in the United States are, or even more so over in Europe. So that's something to think about. Something else that, I wanted to talk about today was, and I wish I could remember what I was thinking this morning. I know when I first woke up this morning, back to Kevin's comment about, Donald Trump creating some type of legislature against the burning of American flags, I was thinking about some different things that I haven't seen on the agenda yet, but now I wasn't planning on talking about it today, just something I was thinking of to myself, but now I can't remember. I'm like, there's a whole list of things I'd like to see happen, but we've just got to give it time. Things are, if you've noticed, are kind of slowing down a little bit. There's a lot of things still working out. Allison says sanctuary cities, it's just a euphemism for harboring illegal aliens. Oh, no question. No question about it. And let's see here. Soros funds the majority of the violent and American protests, anti-American protests. Yeah, and I would like to see a little more action come out against groups like Antifa. Black Lives Matter. These groups do absolutely promote violence in this country. And we know they were funded for what reason? To create chaos and instability within our country. Our own enemy, we've always believed, came from within, and that's exactly the case. The Democrat regime. And now we're starting through, of course, Doge and Elon Musk and all these audits, we're starting to see everything that's uncovered, all of the crazy spending. We knew a lot of the spending was taking place, but now we see it in a different light. And of course, not that it matters, because the Supreme Court, as we know, what just happened recently, the Supreme Court ruled against Donald Trump. Now, see, to me, how does this started with a district judge who stated that Trump is not allowed to freeze 1.9 billion in funds that payments that you said was making to these different organizations, including that $8 million in that South African country to promote LGBTQ organizations. And so I guess I'm surprised, not surprised about Amy Coney Barrett citing against Donald Trump. I know I've seen people play that little video clip of her, kind of looking at him sideways. I felt I saw that clip a few different times. At first, I dismissed it like, oh, that doesn't mean anything. But then the more I watch it, Trump kind of walked past her, didn't say a lot or really acknowledge her. And I think she knows that she's gotten on his bad side. It's not the first time she has ruled against him. But to me, Donald Trump is the chief executive of our country. He is the top person. He is above all of these branches, over all of these departments. And to me, no court should be able to override what it is, that he has planned. If he says, hey, we're going to cut the spending, we have uncovered, stolen money, misappropriated funds, etc. And he says, we're going to stop these payments. And you know what? To me, we voted for him to put him into this position. And therefore, no Supreme Court, no district judge should be able to rule over him. But yet I understand checks and balances. And I know people would say, well, what if it were the other way around? But didn't we just live through that the other way around? Because I don't recall, any court stopping Joe Biden. I remember when a court tried to stop Joe Biden, they cited, remember, against him that he could not, what was he trying to do? Repay the student loans. Remember that? And you know what Joe Biden said? He said, I did it anyway. I didn't care what the court said. I did it anyway. I still paid off the student loans for what was it, like 4 million people, something along those lines. He just did it anyway. And it's really frustrating. And Kevin said, do you want Andrew Bailey on Sean Ryan? You mean as a guest on Sean Ryan? I don't know who Sean Ryan is. Isn't Sean Ryan like a podcast host or something? Well, I love Andrew Bailey, so I would like to see him on any show. And Allison says the Supreme Court ruling on USAID funding pause is a very confusing. Well, it is confusing. And, they voted 5-4 against Donald Trump. And Judge Alito gave a pretty scathing statement afterwards. No Chief Justice Roberts, no surprise there. Amy Coney Barrett, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. It's just what a slap in the face to Trump. What a slap in the face to Trump. Because you know what? Trump put her in that position. He put her in that position. And Kevin he was already on there. No, I did not watch it. I knew that Andrew Bailey had done some type of show recently, but I did not watch it. I'll go back and watch. But I know that Andrew Bailey is, what is it? I was just thinking I just read this story yesterday that he's jumping on board with. You guys can remind me that something that's going on, that I know he's looking into some kind of investigation, or he's on board with something that some other folks are doing, which was important, by the way. Just goes to show where my brain is today, because I did look at that yesterday. Jay says there needs to be judicial reforms to stop these lower courts from doing this. It needs to be federal level. These lower courts really don't have jurisdiction oftentimes. Yeah, this started out with a district judge. Allison said now it goes back to the lower court. I think Donald Trump should do exactly what Joe Biden did. I think he should say, you know what? I don't really care that the Supreme Court ruled against me. We're just going to do it anyway. We're going to stop the funding. We're going to stop these payments anyway, because it is for the better good of America. If Joe Biden can do it, Why can't Donald Trump do it? Joe Biden he just saw a, the court suggest, the court order as a suggestion, right? But he did it anyway, and he bragged about doing it anyway. So why not? And one of the best communicators in politics, Vance Bailey, ticket next. I would like to see that, Kevin. I really like Andrew Bailey. I really liked Eric Schmidt, as the Missouri Attorney General. I really like Andrew Bailey, maybe even more as Missouri Attorney General. And I think he would do an absolute fantastic job, as our vice president. I've interviewed him a couple times, back in the day on one of the shows I was on, and I thought he was absolutely fantastic and certainly doing a good job for Missouri. Jay says Supreme Court didn't make a ruling yet. They only sent it back for clarification. Thank you for that, Jay. Yeah, well, either way, Amy Coney Barrett, not a friend of us, not a friend of Donald Trump, which is really a shame because I really liked her in the beginning. I thought she would do some really fantastic things for us. So, but yeah, in reference to what you say, Jay, a district judge shouldn't be able to make that decision. Just should not be able to make that decision. Mary, but we all know Democrats can do what they want. We can't. I know, isn't that funny that even now when we rule, we have proven we are the majority. We still can't really do what we want. I was thinking about that yesterday after the show. We talked about Obama and how Obama's name is never mentioned. He's never brought up in any of the corruption. No one ever says, well, Obama was paid this much money from USAID, or this much money went to these different organizations he supported. I haven't heard one word. I haven't even heard his name mentioned by the Doge team. And I think there's a reason for that. But I did think it was kind of funny because I read last night that out of the leases that are being ended by the Doge department, the Obama library is one of them. The library is, it's not constructed yet. It's in Hoffman Estates, Illinois, but it is also on the chopping block. And so apparently they have, I don't know, thousands of unclassified documents there related to Obama's presidency. So right now they're working to turn those documents into some type of digital format. And then they were going to start constructing his library. But no more. The building is there, but they're supposed to remodel it and do some other things. And it's been pretty heavily funded, but no more. It is one of the buildings that is up, lease being terminated. So that's not going to happen. Absolutely not going to happen. So what do you guys think about Donald Trump ending the Federal Reserve? You can look this up. House Bill, it's 1846. 1846. Ending the Federal Reserve, because Donald Trump said, maybe it's time that we end the Federal Reserve, because after all, all of this crazy overspending, everything that goes through the Federal Reserve, all it does is lead to higher inflation. So is this going to happen? Are we going to abolish the Fed? We'll see. We will see. Good morning, Elizabeth. And Jay says, agreed, which is what Alito said. The judge, which is something that, also needs to be banned. Yeah, a district judge should have absolutely no right to rule over that case and tell a sitting president what they can and cannot do, what they can and cannot do. ABC News also on the chopping block. They're going to let go of 200 people. And I've heard that 2020 is going to be one of the shows that is affected the most. And I don't really, out of all the shows on ABC, 2020 to me is not the worst one, but that's going to, suffer one of the largest losses. But I mean, come on, can anyone blame these news organizations for cutting staff? They're losing sponsors. I wish that people would wake up and realize that we are the majority. We really are. We proved that. You can look at the map. You can see all of the red with the little dots of the blue. We are the majority. And it's so strange to me when these news organizations, they just cannot seem to get it. They just don't get it. They still think that everyone believes what they believe, that everyone wants to hear their crazy take on things. Rachel Maddow going off on little DJ Daniel, the little boy that had cancer, brain cancer, that Donald Trump featured at his congressional address the other day. And in little DJ Daniel's parents stood up, his dad, and said, forget Rachel Maddow. It's crazy that she would attack any situation with this little boy. which, by the way, Elon Musk has given little DJ Daniel a cyber truck. Well, he's just been giving cyber trucks away left and right. I thought that was kind of funny. And there are quite a few of them just sitting around. So, not, I guess, all that surprising. And Jay says, I would need to hear solutions before we get on board with the Federal Reserve being cut. I am all for the Federal Reserve being cut. Just like Robert says, Federal Reserve System is going bye-bye. I'm with you. Good morning, Michelle. And yes, Jay says, Maddow and Nicole Wallace can continue their disgusting rhetoric. Yeah, I am so sick of liberal news. Donald Trump said he doesn't watch it. I definitely don't watch it. I see little video clips here and there. I know who Joy Reid is, or I should say was. I know who Rachel Maddow is, but I have never once turned the news on at MSNBC. Now, sometimes if there's something really crazy going on, I'll go out and I'll look at the clips or just to see what they're saying over there. But it's really just to make fun of them and laugh at them. It's just crazy to me that they think that's what the American people want to hear, that's what we most relate to. And they're all learning the hard way, and they're going to continue to learn the hard way. They just simply don't get it. Pam, I didn't hear Elon gave the kid a truck. Incredible. Yes, it is incredible. I follow Elon Musk on X, and so I see a lot of the posts that he make and people make to him. And I'll tell you, if you want to know what's going on in the news, go create an account if you don't already have one over on X and follow Elon Musk, because he is a prolific poster on X. And so anything that's going on within the government, he will post it. In fact, he made a post yesterday about daylight savings time, and he was, polling people. Do you want, if we end daylight savings time, do you want that extra hour in the morning or in the evening? And there were over 1 million people who responded, and it was pretty close. It was 58% that wanted the extra hour in the evening. I think it was 40 something percent, the other half, that wanted it in the morning. Now, me personally, if we do end daylight savings time, and I really hope that we do, I would like my extra hour in the evening. I would like it to stay light a little bit longer. I don't know about you guys, but that would be my preference. In the morning, if I have to get up in the morning and drive somewhere, or back in the day when I was getting up in the morning, and driving, to work every day, or, out on the roads every day, I really don't mind driving to work in the morning in the dark. But when I come home from work, when you leave your place of employment, I remember back in the day when I was really young and I had a typical 8 to 5, 9 to 5, type job. And, in the wintertime, you leave, it's dark when you get there and it's dark when you leave. You talk about depressing. That's terrible. So I'm really hoping they add it on to the end of the evening. Allison says, evening. Mary says, did you see the little boy said one more thing in President Trump's office? Yes, I did see that. That was so cute. And I love that his family, was able, he and his dad, I don't know, I saw his brothers, sisters, family coming through the Oval Office and talking to Donald Trump. And it was so cute when he reached over and gave him that big hug. Jay, everyone wants it to end. Pam, end daylight saving time. Trump, that would be better than the Gulf of America. It sure would be, wouldn't it? It would be so much better. And Mary, I'm with you. I hate daylight savings time. And we don't need it anymore. Daylight savings time was used to give the farmers more daylight time in the morning so they could go out and do more work on the farm. And we just don't, there's just no purpose these days for daylight savings time. And not to mention the confusion. I am somebody who has to, for work reasons, talk to people in all parts, of the country on these different time zones. And it's confusing for everyone. It really is, because people will call me or I'll call them at completely the wrong time. We might have a meeting set up at a certain time of day and they don't calculate my time, or I have miscalculated their time. And it just turns into a big old mess. It just, really, what I don't know. I mean, I get it, I guess, this with the sun setting, that we have to be on different time zones, but at the same time, it's just more confusing than it should be. That's for sure. I know there's a lot of different things I wanted to talk about today. Governor Newsom, talking about learning who the majority is. That guy, he's starting to figure it out. I can't recall what it was, but a couple weeks ago, there was something he sided with that was more of a conservative type cause. And I would remember thinking then, well, that's kind of strange. Now, all of a sudden, Gavin Newsom, of course, the governor of Florida, meeting with Charlie Kirk. I never would have ever thought I would see those days. And Gavin Newsom is saying that he is against men playing in women's sports. He's against it. And he thinks it's a disservice to women. I was kind of surprised to see that, probably trying to hold on to that vote. He knows how close he was to being recalled. And Mary says it's not healthy. Stay on standards. Jay says tractors have headlights. You can see from space. I knew they had headlights. I didn't know you could see them from space. Mary says, as time goes on, the days do get longer. So some are still, has plenty of daylight and standard time. Yeah. I'm all for adding it to the end of the day. Allison says, oh, the kids to work on farm early before going to school. Ah, that makes sense. And Robert, as long as they keep the daylight towards the evening. Same, Robert, same. I would like my hour in the evening. I need an extra hour of daylight at the end of the day. That's for me. I don't care if it's dark in the morning. I just want it to be dark, a light time that is during the day. So who knows? Who knows? There's a lot of different things going on in the news, and so many things I want to talk about. I'm just trying to think of, where do we start? Where do we start? I'm going to start with this. Jay says Newsom is 100% about saving votes, nothing more. Well, of course he is. He was so close to being recalled. He knows how close he was. He definitely knows. Things are heating up with Donald Trump over this situation with Greenland. Do you recall in his speech the other night, he was talking about, we have to have Greenland. He is not going to stop. He said he is not going to stop until Greenland becomes part of the United States. And of course, we have the Danish prime minister who is saying that will never happen. It will never happen. Greenland will never become part of the United States. And it really makes me think, well, how far are we willing to go to make sure that we have Greenland? And of course, that has a lot to do with rare earth minerals. Gabe says, Gavin changing his tune because he won't get funding. Also true. Also true. And so therefore, how far are we willing to go? Would you support any type of military action to gain Greenland? I mean, do we really need it? How important are rare earth minerals? At some point, we as Americans, we're going to have to make some decisions. None of us want war. None of us want to go to war. But I definitely do not support war. There's no question about it. However, if you're given a situation in which you are told that we as a country will never be able to progress militarily, we will never be able to create our golden dome if we don't have these rare earth minerals. And so we have two options. We can either force Americans to move out of their communities so we can start mining rare earth minerals here in the United States, or we can attempt diplomatically to obtain rare earth minerals from another country. But then what if those other countries don't want to give us the rare earth minerals? Is it worth going to war over? Now, the difference is that I think now we Americans have a little bit more to say about it than what we did in the past. Now, in the past, when our country wanted oil, remember back in the day, rare earth minerals, no one really cared about those. We didn't need them, back then. We wanted oil, right? Gold, oil, petroleum products, and so on. And what happened back in the day when one of our presidents decided that we, the United States, we need more oil, we need more coal, we need more gold, we would just create a war against another country and take what we wanted. That's how it's always been. We didn't have a lot of transparency. They would tell us, oh, there's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We've got to go over and get Saddam Hussein out of power so we can go over there and get those weapons of mass destruction. Then you find out later, well, no, we really just wanted their resources. So our country just made it up an excuse to go and take what we wanted. Well, we don't do that anymore. Under Donald Trump, that's not the case. We're very transparent. We know we want Greenland because of their natural resources, because of their rare earth minerals. But are we willing to fight for it? Are we willing to send American troops to Greenland and take what we want? I mean, we're coming to a point now where Donald Trump says we will have Greenland. One way or the other, it will happen. Greenland says, nope, not going to happen. The Danish PM says never going to happen. America will never control Greenland. So how far are we willing to go? And I think that we're going to have to at some point make some decisions, because Donald Trump will need the support of the American people. Now, I'd like to see a lot more of what these solutions might be, outside of just taking what we want. Hopefully, there is a diplomatic solution. Donald Trump has offered to purchase Greenland and, of course, was turned down. So we're trying the diplomatic route. I read somewhere that 60% of Greenland citizens were fine, as being annexed into the United States because they see that as a new opportunity for them, to gain a little more wealth individually, to be a little bit more prosperous. And Allison says Maxine Waters accused Elon of rigging the election with his high tech towel. Of course they did, because they can't imagine people like Maxine Waters. They just can't imagine that here in the United States that the majority of people actually would like to see Donald Trump to be their president. And think about what we overcame to have Donald Trump to be our president. I mean, when in history did that? I think maybe did it happen maybe once back in history a long time ago, where we had a sitting president who served a term, was elected out, sat out for 4 years, and then was reelected and came back. I mean, when did that ever happen? And of course, a lot of people floating the idea around of Donald Trump having a third term. I mean, they could create legislation to have a third term, couldn't they? I mean, it's certainly possible. I don't expect it to happen, but it could happen. And there's just things. The world is it's just crazy right now. Donald Trump, again, back to Hamas, has made another ultimatum of Hamas. He's told Hamas, this is the last warning. This is it. And where he expects people to go, I haven't yet heard. But his last warning to Hamas is that you need to release the remaining hostages, and then you and the Palestinian people need to leave the Gaza area. You need to pack up and leave. Now, I don't think that we've worked out any plan yet for a relocation, so I'm not exactly sure where they're supposed to go. And and you can't really tell Hamas to leave, because Hamas, just like the Houthis, just like Hezbollah, they are the people. Not to say that every person in Gaza supports Hamas or is Hamas, but for the most part, when you have a group of people in the situation like the Palestinian people, where they've been oppressed for such a long period of time, and some say for good reason, some say not. That's up to your own determination. But they have been an oppressed people, and of course, when that happens, anytime any group is oppressed, they're going to rise up against the oppressors. And when that happens, it's not just like it's 10 men or 20 men or 300 men. Sometimes it's in the entire community, because they're all fighting for their lives, fighting to, for their own prosperity. So where do you go with Hamas? If we were going to tell Hamas themselves they have to leave, well, we'd have to make everyone leave, wouldn't we? It wouldn't be just one or two people. It wouldn't be just a couple hundred people. It would be everyone. Allison says, I heard that Greenlander, I'm not sure what you're saying there, may vote for their independence from Denmark. Well, I mean, that could be one way to do it. If they have an election and the people choose, I don't think that Denmark will care what they choose. I think Denmark will say, no, not going to happen. I don't care what your people vote for. It just doesn't work that way. And Jay says he didn't say Palestinian people, but he did tell Hamas. Well, but that's just exactly what I'm saying, Jay. Hamas is the Palestinian people. While there may be Palestinian people there who want peace and maybe don't support Hamas, I would say the majority are Hamas. Just like I'm not comparing the Palestinian people to ISIS by any means, but let's just say that ISIS as a group, when you go, let's say, to Syria, and you say, oh, this is a rebel held area and this is where ISIS is. And they say, oh, ISIS, you have to leave. It's not as if you have, 50 men that say, okay, we're going to pack our bags and go. It's the entire community. They are there in that area because the community supports them. They are one in the same. And so when you tell ISIS they have to leave one of these rebel held areas, well, it's everyone. It's not just pick and choose. It's everyone. Because they are all, even though they may not be actively out fighting, you have the women and children, of course, and you have the younger boys. They're not out fighting, but they are all still part of ISIS. Either family members, relatives, they're all still part of ISIS. So when you tell Hamas they have to leave the Palestinian area, that pretty much means everyone. And Allison says, what Hamas has done to the hostages are pure evil and not fighting for oppression. Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys saw. Thank you, Vernon. That's who I was. I knew there was someone. Grover Cleveland was president number 22 and then 24. Thank you for that. I'm like, I knew there was someone from back in that era. And Allison, I'm sure some of you saw some of the hostages that have been released in the Oval Office. And, while they didn't get into their stories, one of the men said his brother is still there. Another man said that his wife and children were murdered on that day. It's pretty horrific. These stories are horrific. And we all saw, I think, one of the young females that had been released and was missing a finger. Another one of the young female hostages, they said, had been severely beaten. She had scars and stitches, and they said she looked like a pincushion. It was really that bad. And one man testified that he had been starved. He had seen he himself, I don't think he was tortured, but he said that he saw the hostages that he was held with had been tortured and, beaten horrifically. And how he had been moved 33 different times. And a couple of those times he was kept in the tunnels. And he said, when you're in those tunnels, you can't breathe. There's no oxygen to breathe. It is absolutely awful. It is absolutely awful. But how do we end it? How do you create peace in this type of situation? The only way to do that would be to make all of the Palestinian people move, which of course is what Donald Trump is proposing. But there, as of right now, is no country willing to accept them. How do you move, 2.5 to, or some people say 2.9 million people to another area? Do you break them up? Do you send some here, some there? That's not really right either. I don't know that we're going to come to a peaceful solution when it comes to Hamas. And they haven't really been much in the forefront lately because there's been so much going on between Ukraine and Russia, and now we've got France. And I've got a couple videos to talk about because we know, and we've said this on this show more times than I can count. We know that Western Europe has always wanted a war against Russia. We, the United States, under Obama and under Biden, we were also part of that. That was our objective as well. We were part of that same group that wanted war against Russia. And, I sit on here and I talk about it all the time, probably more than you guys would like me to talk about it. But I talk about it so much because I see things playing out. I see it happening. And we for a while there, when things were really tense between Ukraine and Russia, we kept saying, under Joe Biden, we're going to have a war. We know that Joe Biden wants war with Russia. We know Western Europe wants war with Russia. We had Russia throwing around the nuclear word. Remember that? Constantly threatening. And then when we saw Russia send over that Orishnik missile. Gosh, I cannot talk today. I'm just having an off day. So I apologize in advance for my off day. But we saw that happen, and things just kept heating up and heating up. And to a point where we thought that it was just going to boil over at some point. And then Donald Trump got elected, and then things simmered down. Thankfully, Putin was able to keep his poise, knowing Donald Trump was coming into office. But now we're back at that phase where things are starting to heat up again, and at such an accelerated pace. And Mr. Parnot, Israel are not free of crimes against the Palestinian prisoners or the people. Oh, no, Mr. Parnot, you are absolutely 100% correct, which is exactly why I referred to the Palestinian people as oppressed. Because, and if we'll get back to Russia and Ukraine here in just a second, but the reason why I say the Palestinian people are oppressed is because Israel controls their electricity and their water supply, and they control their borders. So therefore, you have a group of people in a barrel. These people can't leave. They're not allowed to leave. They're in this little area. Israel protects all the borders. They don't allow the people to leave. There's a beautiful beach there that they're not even really allowed to use. And they're certainly not allowed to leave by boat, despite the fact that they have a beautiful coast there. And they control their water. So when they think that the Palestinian people are misbehaving, or if there's some type of incident between the Palestinian people and one of the Israeli soldiers, or police officers. Well, what ends up happening is they cut off their water supply, or they cut off their electricity, they cut off their medical, supplies. So it's a very difficult situation for them. So no, Israel is definitely not innocent in this situation. It takes two people, two sides to create this kind of situation, neither side being innocent. And when you have this type of situation, it's really difficult to create peace. These two groups will never be able to live alongside each other in peace, because they each think the other group wants to kill them, and they do. So their reasoning about that is true, and you just can't keep peace between them, And of course, Donald Trump has his own plans for Gaza, and Donald Trump. Gosh, I don't know what my problem is today. I need to go back to bed and start all over. But he created that video, or he didn't create, he shared that video. If you guys remember, I played it here, where it made Gaza look like Dubai. It was like beautiful beaches and high rises, and there's a lot of plans in place, that's for sure. Allison said the condition that the Palestinian prisoners and the condition of the Israeli hostages was quite different. Palestinian prisoners were not held in tunnels and tortured, nor do they hold 9 months old. Well, we're hearing that Hamas actually physically beat to death babies that were held in as hostages. But Allison, don't be fooled in thinking that Israel doesn't torture prisoners, because they do. We here in the United States, we torture prisoners. There is no country free from brutal torture. Anytime you hold prisoners, I can assure you that there's a lot of mistreatment that does go on. I'm not saying Israel's beating to death babies with their bare fists, like Hamas has been accused of, but at the same time, I feel like unless we're there, unless we know, it's very difficult to place blame on anyone for doing anything, because there's so much propaganda that's out there. But don't think that Israel does not torture prisoners, because they do. And I know for a fact, we here in the United States, even though it is against, our law, we do absolutely torture a prisoner. Remember waterboarding? What was that movie? Zero Dark 30? Was that the one where they talk about waterboarding and the torture of prisoners here in the United States? It absolutely does happen, has happened, will continue to happen. That's never going to change. We're never going to have a situation where countries don't torture various prisoners for different reasons to try to gain some knowledge. Joe Fry, good morning. Good morning to you, Joe Fry. Joe Fry, let's see. The problem all stemmed from the UN and the USA deciding to place the Jews from around the world into Palestine, because an ancient book called the Bible claimed it belonged to the Jews 5,000 years ago. Mr. Parnell, Israel gang rapes prisoners, and they support this action, and why Netanyahu was brought up on crimes against humanity. Yeah, Netanyahu has actually shouldn't belong. The man should not be in government. I support Israel. I support all people for whatever it is their goals are for their own nations. I support all people. It's the people like us that are the pawns of the government. But yes, Netanyahu has been charged many times with many different types of crimes, including collusion, including stealing, a lot like Democrats have in our country. So, I liked Bennett a lot better than Netanyahu, but to each their own. And so I want to get back a little bit to Russia and Ukraine, because that situation is very quickly escalating. We had French President Macron give a speech to his people the other day, and literally saying, prepare yourselves for war. Germany, prepare yourselves for war. And we how many times have we said on the show, these countries are preparing themselves for war? Is it actually going to happen? We don't know. I'm going to play a couple minutes of Macron's speech here in a minute. But before I do that, Allison says, I have no doubt about that. But there is no justifying them. Hamas taking innocent hostages, not work. I completely agree with you, Allison. What Hamas did on October 7th was irreprehensible, and they should be punished to no end for what they did. I watched the videos unfolding, live. It was absolutely horrific. And the crimes, the things that they have done to children in particular who have been held hostage is just awful. It's even hard for me to think about. As a matter of fact, last night I was reading a story right before I went to sleep, and I thought, oh my God, this is the last thing I want to read before I go to bed, because I'm probably going to have dreams about it. It was so horrific. Some of the things that Hamas did to some of these children the hostages, and far worse than what they've done to the adults. It's pretty bad, and I believe that it's true. There's firsthand accounts that these things actually happened. Not everything is propaganda. Lots propaganda, but not everything is. Jay said the difference in the Middle East won't go away, regardless if you resettle anyone. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there will be no peace in the Middle East. It'll never happen. We know that. It will never happen. It just will never happen. It says that in the Bible. It'll never happen. And so it will never happen. And we can resettle people. We can move people around. We can build our Dubai, down the Gaza Strip, but it's not going to make any difference whatsoever. All right. So what I want to do first, I'm going to show you this video clip. We talk so much here about Russia and Ukraine and everything that's going on. I'm not going to play the whole 4-minute video clip, but I want to show you RFK Jr. explains so well the situation. People attack me constantly. They say, oh, you shouldn't support Putin. You shouldn't support Russia. Well, first of all, I support America, Americans, the United States, and our president, Donald Trump. Putin is not my president. Russia is not my country. However, I do think that Russian values are much more traditional, are much more aligned with conservative values. But most people don't know that because of the propaganda machine that's been running since the Cold War, trying to tell Americans that Russia is our enemy. And it's kind of interesting to me how we as conservatives will say, oh, we know the government lies to us under Democrat power. We know that they're rewriting history. We know they're stealing money from us. But when it comes to Russia, we believe everything they say. I always kind of laugh about that. Like, okay, so the government's wrong about literally everything except for Russia. So they told you the truth about Russia, but they didn't tell you the truth about anything else, or China for that matter. China is not our ally, and they're not even close to being our ally. I hope someday they are, because they are a formidable force. And I think some days with their partnership with Russia will make them a little bit of a closer ally to us. I think that's something Donald Trump will eventually sort out once they get through this tariff war negotiation they're going through. But, people always tell me that I'm crazy, for thinking that Putin is more aligned with us than, let's say, Europe, Macron or Keir Starmer or some of these other people in Western Europe. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? The Ursula van der, whatever her name is, just made that speech the other day. She's the chairperson of the EU, that freedom of speech is a virus. And people want to say, oh, we should be aligned with Western Europe. No, we absolutely should not be aligned with Western Europe. Only under Democrat power, yes. But we've got to undo all the lies that have been told to us. And I saw this video with Robert Kennedy Jr. talking about Ukraine and how all of this started with Russia. And I'm like, well, nobody ever believes me when I talk about these things. So hopefully they'll believe Robert Kennedy Jr. You don't have to believe me, believe him. So I'm going to show this quick video to you here. Again, it's 4 minutes long. I'm not going to play the whole video, but I'm going to play some important parts.
Putin every day says, I want to settle the war. Let's negotiate. And Zelensky has said, we're not going to negotiate. But Zelensky didn't start that way. I don't want to, belabor the history, but Russia was invaded 3 times through Ukraine. The last time Hitler killed 1 out of every 7 Russians. They don't want to have Ukraine join NATO. So when the wall came down in the Soviet Union, Europe, Gorbachev destroyed himself politically by doing something that was very, very courageous. He went to Bush and he said, I'm going to allow you to reunify Germany under a NATO army. I'm going to remove 450,000 Soviet troops, but I want your commitment. After that, you will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. And we solemnly swore we wouldn't do it. Well, then in 97, Brzezinski was the first of the neocons, said, we're going to move NATO 1,000 miles to the east and take 15 countries into it and surround the Soviet Union. So then we not only move it into 14 new nations, but we unilaterally walk away from our 2 nuclear weapons treaties with the Russians. And we put Aegis missile systems in Romania and Poland 12 minutes from Moscow. When Russians did that to Cuba in '62, we came this close to nuclear war until they removed them. So the Russians don't want nukes 400 miles from Moscow. We then overthrow the Ukraine government. In 2014, their elected government, and put in a Western sympathetic government. Russia then has to go into Crimea because they have a port. It's their only warm water port. And they know the new government that we just installed is going to invite the U.S. Navy into their port. So Russia then went into Crimea without firing a shot, because the people of Crimea are Russian. Then the new Ukrainian government we installed started killing ethnic Russians in Donbass and Lugansk, and they voted to leave and join Russia. Putin said, I don't want them. Let's give them protection and give them semi-autonomy and make an agreement to keep NATO out of Ukraine. That treaty was written by Germany, France, Russia, and England, the Minsk Accords. And the Ukrainian parliament, which is controlled by ultra-rightists, and that's a nice way of talking about them, refused to sign it. Zelensky runs in 2019. He's an actor. Why did he get elected with 70% of the vote? Because he promised to sign the Minsk Accords. He promised peace. He gets in there and he pivots. Nobody can explain why, but we know why. Because he was threatened with death by ultra-rightists in his government and a withdrawal of support by the United States by Victoria Nuland, who's leading the econ in the State Department. We told him he could not sign it. So then the Russians go in. They don't send a big army. They only send 40,000 people. It's a nation of 44 million people. They clearly do not intend to conquer Ukraine. But they want us back at the negotiating table. We won't allow Zelensky to go back. So he goes to Israel and Turkey and says, will you please help me negotiate a treaty? The Russians just want a guarantee that Ukraine won't join NATO. Zelensky signs the treaty. Putin's people sign the treaty. And Putin starts withdrawing the Russian troops in good faith. And what happens? Joe Biden sends Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, over to Ukraine in April and forces him to tear up the treaty. And since then, 450,000 kids have died who none of them should.
And since that actually was, this video was made, it's actually been closer to, I'm hearing as many as 2 million troops have died. You know, over 700,000 Ukrainian troops have died in this war. And yet Europe wants it to continue. They are continuously, not only Western Europe, but our Democrat leaders here in this country, meeting with Zelensky, of course, ahead of that Trump meeting in the Oval Office, telling Zelensky to hold strong, don't give in. Zelensky does not want peace. I know Donald Trump continues to promote peace, and we're doing our best to work out a peace agreement. And I hope that we can work out a peace agreement quickly to avoid, you know, this war situation. Hopefully we'll sit it out and it won't directly affect us. But if we have Western Europe, you know, calling for war in Ukraine against Russia, that's definitely going to be a problem. You know, even Elon Musk made a statement. He said, this is his direct statement. He said, they want the forever war. How many more parents with no sons? How many more children with no father? He said that by their logic, it never ends, and it doesn't end. They don't want it to end. And you know, we have French President Macron giving his own statement. I'm only going to play a couple seconds of this because it's 13 minutes long. I'm going to play like 1 minute of his video, but he's, you know, talking to the French people about preparing for war because he wants to send French troops into Ukraine, and it's not for peacekeeping missions.
The war in Ukraine has led to huge numbers of lives lost. Our ally, the United States, has changed its position. And there are doubts about what will happen next. At the same time, even the United States is trying to impose tariffs on goods coming from Europe. And the threat we are witnessing from war and terror is not diminishing. Our peace, our security are more uncertain. We are entering a new era.
So I'm not going to play that whole video, but he goes on to talk about the threat against Western Europe by Russia and how we, the United States, now that we have stopped all aid to Russia, we are no longer at this point, there's a complete freeze. We are no longer supplying weapons to Ukraine. We're not giving them any type of training. We are not allowing any of our intelligence information to be shared with Ukraine. And therefore, you know, that they see as us, of course, as a complete withdrawal from any type of NATO activities. And then in the meantime, we have Macron, we have Keir Starmer, we have Poland, who was siding on our side for peace, is now kind of turning the other direction, with Tusk saying that maybe, looking at nuclear weapons across Western Europe and Ukraine is at least worthy of discussion. I mean, here we go talking about nuclear weapons again. And Macron goes on to talk about how the French people need to prepare for war, how they know that if they send French troops over to Ukraine, that Russia is very likely going to attack them, in Ukraine, French troops in Ukraine. We have Russia saying that they absolutely do not support NATO troops in Ukraine, and they would not consider that a proxy war. They would consider that a direct war. That if NATO sends troops, if France sends troops, if Britain sends troops, then that's an act of war, not a proxy war, a direct act of war. And Jay says European leadership is about to go the way of the Democratic Party here. You better believe it. I don't know if you guys saw these videos, but man, yesterday there were uprisings taking place all across Western Europe. Thousands of people out in the streets with American flags. 63% of French citizens do not support sending troops over to Ukraine. And, Macron, that guy's hanging by a thread as it is. He really is. Keir Starmer, hanging by a thread. These people, they look at Donald Trump and they see what we're doing here in the United States, and they know that the same corruption occurs in their countries. Do you really think that the people who live in London want all of these immigrants in their country that are completely changing everything about the city that they love? Of course not. The same for France, the same for many of these countries. Joe Fry says the Ukraine Azov Nazis have Zelensky under threat of death if he signs a peace deal. The Azov needs to go before there will be peace in Ukraine. And Joe, I couldn't agree with you more. For anyone who does or doesn't know about who the Azov is, they used to be referred to as the Azov Battalion before. They used to be a militia prior to Russia's incursion into Ukraine. And when Russia invaded Ukraine, Ukraine made the Azov Battalion part of their army. They incorporated them into their national army. So now they are officially fighting on the side of Ukraine. And these Azovs, man, they're brutal. And they wear swastikas on their helmets, swastika patches on their shoulders. They are definitely Nazis. I mean, that's not even a joke. They are true Nazis. And they despise Russia. They despise Russian-speaking people. And if you guys go back and remember the name Mariupol, and when this incursion, first took place into Ukraine, Mariupol was one of the first towns that was seized by Russia. And people don't understand what was going on there. We had these Azov militants. They had surrounded the entire city of Mariupol for quite some time. They had dug a trench all the way around the city of Mariupol. And of course, Mariupol being a city of French-speaking people. So the Azovs came in, they took over the businesses, and they wouldn't allow the Russian-speaking people to even come in and make purchases. The treatment of the Russian-speaking people was really bad in this town, and they couldn't leave. They were trapped in the town because they had dug these trenches around the town and wouldn't let people leave through the checkpoint. And this was all under Ukraine's watch. This was under Zelensky's watch that this was happening. And I have no doubt in my mind that there will never be peace in this situation. I love that Donald Trump is trying to create a peace plan between Russia and Ukraine. But these people who consider themselves this Azov battalion, these people do not want peace. They will never give up their hatred for Russia. And even if we create the best peace deal, these people are still going to be fighting Russians. They're right on the border. There's no question about it. And that's why I've said so many times that if we, the United States, agreed to send our troops over, even in a peacekeeping, as peacekeepers, there is no way that we would get through the situation without it turning into a war, because we know that these Azov battalion guys, these militants, they're going to start attacking Russia just like they have been since 2012. That's not going to stop. Very similar to Hamas and Israel. That fighting will never stop. These two people hate each other. It's the same thing with these Azovs. I think that Ukraine could probably get a good control on their military, because their military members, they don't want to fight this war. They're ready to go back home. And, the land that's already been taken by Russia, these were Russian speaking people that were in that area. And it's unfortunate all these people had to die, for Russia to protect the Russian speaking people that the Azov battalion, was constantly harming. And I just don't think that I really just don't think. Oh, I see that you said he has Zelensky under the threat of death. Yeah, Zelensky's going to France. Macron's going to make a special little home for him in France because they're not having elections in Ukraine. Why? Because Zelensky knows if they have an election, he will lose. And whoever takes his place absolutely will create a peace deal. Do you really think that Zelensky's making all these decisions? He's making these decisions about as much as Joe Biden did. No, it is Western Europe. It's the deep state making decisions for Zelensky. He's the little puppet on a string that has to come into the Oval Office or goes over to France and talks to Macron. He's just a little puppet on the string. That's all. And don't think for 1 minute that guy is capable of making these decisions on his own. He absolutely is not. He absolutely is not. And so how far again are they willing to go? That's always the question, isn't it? We're just talking about how far are we Americans willing to go to have access to the rare earth minerals in Greenland and to expand our territory. Well, how far is Europe willing to go to create war with Russia? Possibly all the way. So that's something that's definitely escalating very, very quickly. If Europe, if France, if Britain, if they place their troops in Ukraine, all hell's going to break loose. And then we, the United States, we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do. And hopefully under Donald Trump, we're going to keep a mineral deal with Ukraine. We're going to keep a mineral deal with Russia. And otherwise, we're going to stay out of the mix. We do not want to get involved in any war between Europe and Western Europe and Russia. We don't want it. But again, both sides saying, hey, if you do this, we're going to do this. If you do this, we're going to do that. Europe, of course, wanting to potentially arm all European countries now, Western European countries with nuclear weapons, including Ukraine, their new buddy. And then, of course, Russia coming back and saying, nope, you're not going to do that. If you send troops to Ukraine, that's it. We will consider that a war and we will act appropriately. We, the United States, we've got to stay out of that mess. I know we don't have a whole lot of time left. Something I want to talk about, which I think you guys will all find about as funny as I do, is I was reading some reports yesterday, no doubt backed by Bill Gates, who said that your home garden creates more greenhouse gases than a farmer's big field would. Now, who in the world would have came up with something crazy like that? And you know what that's about. Now, that's not going to work under Trump's presidency. They're going to try to tell you, they've already tried to tell us you can't have chickens. You can't have eggs. They're doing their best to get rid of, chickens. They didn't have to kill all these chickens, as we now know. They could have treated the chickens that were sick and left the healthy ones remaining, but they didn't do that. And instead, they just culled millions of chickens. And now we have you seen some of these videos where there are lines miles long, for people trying to get fresh, farm eggs because eggs are so expensive at the grocery store? Here in my own community, I saw a post yesterday in one of the local Facebook groups, people asking, where can we find eggs, fresh eggs? Now, I only have 6 little chickens, so I can't supply eggs for the entire town. But it was kind of interesting that it is now a hot commodity to be selling eggs. Here in my area, they were selling them for $3 and $4 a dozen. And I'll tell you, some of my eggs are real tiny. I wouldn't get much for those. I have 3 little cochins who lay the tiniest little eggs. It takes like 3 eggs to make one. But then I have olive eggers that lay absolutely enormous eggs, larger than any egg I've ever seen at a grocery store. They are absolutely huge. And so the egg battle continues. But I couldn't believe it when I read this story that they're trying to tell people that your home garden, especially right now when we're heading into gardening season, that your home garden, it creates such a big carbon footprint that people should not be able to be allowed to have a home garden. I mean, it is insane. Pam, I am with you, man. Karen, you have a good day too. And Bill Gates, what are we going to do about that guy? That's another thing. Early in the show, Kevin mentioned, about Donald Trump. When is he going to write some type of order, to punish folks who burn American flags? When is he going to write some kind of order to get rid of not only Bill Gates, but all of Bill Gates' policies, all of these things? Let's go back. What are all the things Bill Gates has done? Now we know he bought that big potato farm. Where was that, in Idaho? What is he doing up there in Idaho, farming potatoes? That's something to be looked at. And then we have a situation where what is he creating DNA, changing the DNA in mosquitoes to attack Zika virus? He unleashed all of those little mechanical mosquitoes across Florida. What was it, 300,000 of them a couple years ago, also to attack Zika virus and other mosquito-borne illnesses. And then we know that he's trying to create some type of nuclear fusion to recreate the sun, was something China's doing as well. And then he's got his program. It's a solar geoengineering to block the sun. It's like, what is this guy doing? Literally, what is he doing? The guy, there's no way he believes in God or the Bible. There's no way, because anyone who did would never come up with these crazy strategies. There's just no way, but thankfully, like we talked about earlier, at least now we know our new guy over at the NIH is going to end gain of function research. And that's what I was trying to think of earlier. I wish Donald Trump, and I know he'll probably get around to it, I wish that he would come up with some type of legislature that would end any type of experimental testing on Americans, because we know it's been happening since we've become a country, that our government has tested things on us. In the St. Louis area, remember, it was Agent Orange, and there's been so many other incidents of testing. Remember that fog vid we had recently, and that was tested, and it was some type of bacteria that would never be normal in nature. So it's like, how is this particular bacteria coming down in this fog? It looks like a snowstorm, but it's like thick, heavy fog. And then they tested the bacteria. I wish I could remember the name of that bacteria now. But it caused a lot of people a lot of illness. There's just, I wish he would also get down. There's so many things we all should write a list of things we would like Donald Trump to do. The other thing I would like to see happen is them go up against these arsonists. What did we have? South Carolina, 175 separate fires. Now, are you going to tell me that happened naturally, that at the same time, there's 175 separate fires taking place in South Carolina, near Myrtle Beach? That doesn't make any sense, does it? I saw last night there was a fire near Gatlinburg. We know that I have plenty of videos of arsonists being held by people in communities in California who saw them starting fires. When are we going to come up with legislature against these people? They need to be held on terrorism charges. A lot of them are here illegally. And of course, they need to be deported, and they will be deported if they're caught. But there needs to be some deterrent, some way to keep these people from going out and starting fires. Maybe get back to, did somebody pay them to start these fires? Was it some type of ideology that caused them to start these fires? There's a reason why people are going out and creating arson besides just mental health issues. Sometimes it is, homeless people out starting fires. Sometimes it's just regular people who, of course, do it by accident. Sometimes, of course, we can go back and blame it on electric wires and so on. But a lot of times it's just arsonists who want to cause chaos. And we've got to get down to the bottom of why. We've got to come up with a deterrent. But there are so many different things that I would love to see Donald Trump tackle. Of course, only a few days in office, so we've got a long way to go on that. But hopefully we'll come up with some other ideas. There's just so many different things that we could do, and so many different directions that we're going in, as well. And I hope that part of what DOGE does, the Department, of course, of Government Efficiency, I hope they continue going through these files. I realize the courts are ruling against them. They're trying to stop them from ending these payments. And we kind of touched base on this earlier. I know that Elon Musk and Rand Paul, they're trying to create an order to rescind the $500 billion that Congress has already approved in spending, because where is that money going? We all know how that goes. We'll say, oh, it's $500 billion, and some of it goes to defense and some of it goes to this or that. But we know in the end, a portion of it, you slice off a portion that goes back to kickbacks to the various people who voted for that plan. We know some of it goes to the lobbyists. A lot of that money gets distributed in places it shouldn't get distributed. So when are we going to end that? I would love to see lobbying ended, quite honestly, or at least restrictions placed upon lobbyists. There's something that we need to do in that area to change things. We should not have a system in which, if you are a member of Congress and you vote on a bill, that you get paid out the back door for voting on that bill. And a lot of that starts at a corporation. A certain corporation wants a certain bill passed for a certain reason. They pay the lobbyist. The lobbyist goes over here and interacts with the members of Congress. And the next thing you know, the bill passes, against American interests in many cases. And then guess what's happened? They pass this $500 billion. Some of it goes to the causes it was supposed to go to, but a big portion of it is paid back to the members who voted on it. And that should absolutely be illegal. It should absolutely be illegal. And I just don't hear anyone talking about making it illegal. And then if they did make it illegal, would anyone even run for Congress? Would we have people who even would go through all of the trouble, all of the campaigning, putting all that money in to get to Congress to not make any extra money? I'm fully convinced that whether you're Republican or a Democrat, if you're running for Congress, you might start out thinking, oh, I'm doing it for the right reasons. I want to be a member of Congress because I want to help the American people. I want to make my country a better place. But then they get there and they think, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get paid X millions of dollars, not hundreds of dollars, millions of dollars, if I cast my vote yes for this bill. And they just sell themselves out. And in the process, they sell us out. And I'm just tired of it. I don't know how we fight it. I don't know what happens with the members of Congress that we already have who have taken kickbacks, but something that we're all worried about, the Epstein list and the P. Diddy list. What about the list of members in Congress and the kickbacks they've taken? We know some of the names, but I would really like to see an entire list, all of the names of every single member of Congress that has taken money for passing a certain bill, because it should absolutely be illegal. It should be absolutely banned. And then we're going to see people for who they really are, aren't we? Because a lot of these bills, they go against us Americans. It's not in the best interest of our country. And I want to know every single name who has voted on one of these bills that harmed Americans and took money for doing so. I mean, am I wrong for wanting to see that list? And then if we do see that list, is it going to change everything? Are we going to look at Congress and just lose all faith in our system? I think probably so. I'm one of those people, I know we're about out of time, but I'm one of those people where I would like to wipe the slate clean. I would like to get rid of all of the members of Congress, even the couple of good ones. There aren't many good ones. Get rid of them all, wipe the slate clean, start all over again. Ban all of these ridiculous rules for where they can, have all this insider trading, taking money from lobbyists, voting on bills, sending them to USAID, of course, money being paid out to all these different places. Let's just start all over, wipe the slate clean, start all over. And I know Donald Trump is doing something along those lines with restructuring, but it's not going to be enough. Not when we have the same members of Congress who are just going to continue to vote against us because they're getting paid to do so. We've just got to tackle it from the other end. Anyway, that's about all I have to say for today. Lots more to talk about tomorrow, another day, thankfully a Friday. We're going to talk a little bit more about gardening tomorrow. It's about that time. A lot of people getting their seedlings together. I'm kind of halfway in the process. I've gotten some started. I don't have, unfortunately, the past, I don't know, maybe, 4 weeks now. I've been working, 12, 13, 14, 15 hour days, sleeping for 2 or 3 hours, then getting up and doing the show, then working another 12, 13, 14, 15 hours. And it's going to be a long night tonight. I'm probably going to be really tired tomorrow. Not only do I have to put in many hours of work, but I also have to work in, I have an anti-piracy screening tonight that starts really late. So I'm going to be really tired tomorrow. So forgive me now. I'm tired today, but as you can probably tell. But we'll be back at it tomorrow. Lots more to talk about, lots more in the news. Things continue to unfold every day. I feel like every morning when I wake up, there's so many new things going on. So we will tackle all of that then. I hope you guys have a great night. Can't wait to see you all tomorrow. And I'm Tabitha with Tabs on Tap. And have a good